The views and opinions expressed on any program are those of the producers and/or the persons appearing on the program and do not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of FRC Media, Bristol Community College, or the City of Fall River.
Well, hello. Welcome to Spindle City Straight Talk. I'm Chip.
And I'm CJ.
And it's hump day in the Riv.
I object! I object!
I second that objection. Wait a minute. Yeah. Well, we said we were waiting with bated breath for the Tuesday meeting, and now...
And who the two would be, and now we know who.
We're out of breath now after watching that fiasco. As you well know if you watched it, both CJ and I spoke, and it was a.
You got 4 minutes.
And it wasn't. That wasn't the reason the guy got thrown out. It was that a woman who came up and she was talking, and
yep.
Because she was talking against Jazel and said he couldn't do his job effectively. You got one of Jazel's supporters to go crazy because they're, as I said. Everything that went at their meeting virtually had nothing to do with the motion. The reality was that we had Joe Macy, who, well, we began. Let's start with the beginning, right? Citizens input. We got Pat Casey talking about this is politics, and we got to get all the facts. And I was on the city council for 18 years, and did Pat Casey get a car fixed immediately? When people were waiting 2 or 3 years, they hit a pothole.
Yep.
And she got like a complete car rebuilt, and she had a few other issues with using her political office for something. So that's kind of like the pot calling the kettle black. That was the beginning. And then talking about getting the facts shows why she was a totally ineffective city councilor. She has no clue what she's talking about half the time, and she has to read from a prepared script. You got to get the facts. Well, the only time we'll know which facts are actually facts is when a court makes a finding. Because everything that Jazel is presenting is his version of the facts in their opinion. And everything that the feds are giving are their facts. It's up to a judge and a jury to determine what are real facts. I think that obviously, you know, there's going to be corroborative evidence. This isn't a circumstantial case, according to what I've read. They've got tax forms and they're going to have all kinds of testimony. But the reality is, this is all a smokescreen to delay the necessity of removing a mayor who's going to be totally ineffective. And I don't care if it's Jazel or a mayor that I liked, which I have to go back. I don't even know if I ever liked any of our mayors. But you know, because I have to be truthful about that. You know, once they get in, they seem to all sacrifice their principles and start playing to pay for play, play for pay and buy your way into City Hall and put all your cronies in. Not to the degree that this mayor has, but they all do it. But the reality is that, it's got nothing to do with anything. It's all diversion. They talked about the charter. Now you got Mike Mioza appointing himself the corporation counsel of the charter. He was full of crap, too. He's talking about it's got to be a recall because the heading temporary. Correct me if I'm wrong, CJ. Wasn't the motion to temporarily remove the mayor?
Yes, it was.
So why is the word temporary a sticking point? Mike Mioza is assuming that motion meant the permanent removal, even though the motion said temporary?
He used to be a city councilor. I don't understand how...
There you go again. You wonder why our city doesn't go anywhere? These are the councilors we have. We got Pat Casey that doesn't know that if you wait for all the facts, you're basically saying we've got to wait till the trial's over. And people, it's got nothing to do with whether you're pro-Jazel or anti-Jazel. This city can no longer have 25 news trucks, which all got ticketed, by the way, thanks to the mayor. Look at all the people that are coming here to cover this. They all got tagged. We can't have the major news story being about a mayor and his legal problems when we have a city that's the most dangerous city in the state. We all know. We've gone into a litany of all the negative CJ articulated that at the meeting yesterday. We've got a litany of problems. We can barely make any positive movement with everybody working together and under the best conditions. With the most charismatic, greatest mayor in the world, we would have trouble digging out of the hole that politicians have dug for us. And he can't understand that he is obstructing the ability of Fall River by staying in office. Step away. They didn't say they were going to get rid of him. They said they were going to temporarily remove him. Well, if you really want to come back, expedite the trial, plead your case, be found guilty, and then you can give everybody the finger and walk back into the 6th floor. This is ridiculous. This is what government creates. Washington, now Fall River's making Washington look good. We're like the antithesis of Washington. We had Kavanaugh convicted with no evidence. Now the federal government presented evidence, and we want to ignore that, and we're going to say, forget it. In this particular case, this is what's wrong. This is not about the evidence. It's not about the charter. It's about whether Mayor Correa can effectively lead. The governor said it. Congressmen have said it. Anybody in their right mind would understand that. And as I said at the council meeting yesterday, somebody who's charged with child molestation cannot be in charge of a daycare center, even though his presumption of innocence is still there and his constitutional right to due process is still there. But again, we've got Councilor Casey talking about the evidence. We got somebody saying this is America. You know, we salute the flag. Be an American. He's innocent until proven. Nobody's saying he's not innocent. What the council was trying to say is get out. Get out of here and let all these media people be chasing you around your basement apartment in your mother's house where you are now since you got evicted. Let that news be separate news from the business of the city of Fall River. You can't be the mayor when you're charged with something like this. You've got to step away. But as usual, people don't want, there's no consistency. And by the way, I got to get this in before I turn it over to you. They talked about this is politics, this is conflict of interest. Do you really think Joe Macy should have been given a legal opinion? A man who got a $90,000 a year part-time job from the mayor and then got a $20,000 pay raise? He doesn't have a conflict of interest? You didn't know what his opinion was? I'll remind you, we had a former corporation counsel, John Frank, say that they felt it was legal for them to take that vote. We had the attorney, Les Rich, for the recall, who said he, in his interpretation, and I also spoke to 2 other corporation counsels in other communities who I know personally. Both of them are attorneys, and both of them are very good attorneys. Both of them said that reading this, the council had an absolute right. So we've got 4 attorneys that refute our corporation counsel, who has a conflict of interest. But I'm not saying Macy's wrong. But I got more people that say he's wrong, who have the legal expertise to say he's wrong. But they're opinions, as I said yesterday. Both of them are opinions. So it has to be litigated. Take the vote, and if they feel that's strong, let them take it to court and we'll find out. But the issue is he can't perform the job. He cannot perform the job. But those 2 cowards and obstructionists had to stop the proceeding and not take the vote. And Joe Macy did make one statement that I liked. He said that, you know, the charter is not the constitution of the city. You're right, because it's not a constitution, it's a charter. The constitution of the state, and it's not a state, it's a commonwealth, by the way, Joe. The Constitution of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts is our Constitution. And by the way, CJ, what does our Constitution say in part of the first, Section 5?
All power resides with us, peoples.
And they are at all times agents and representatives of the people.
That's right.
The people wanted you to answer, Steve. They didn't want you to obstruct the process.
That was his answer. That was his answer. He didn't want to take a vote. And, you know, this morning on the radio.
Well, but the people wanted a vote. That's what I'm saying.
Yep.
They said that the Constitution is our Constitution. He violated his constitutional duty.
That's right.
Not only his duty as a representative to the city of Fall River, I guess that paving Purchase Street a little farther to include your property really worked.
It's funny you should mention that because I mentioned it this morning to a couple of the news outlets. My phone's been ringing off the hook. But you've got Joe Camara, whose brother got an $80,000, $90,000 a year job.
Yep.
And you have Steve Camara, whose property value is being increased because of streetscapes.
And wasn't there some questions about the door and windows when Horner bid, and they said it was already gone to what company? The company that Joe works for.
ABC.
Yeah. And also there are other questions about what's going on. We have two people who he's prohibited to have contact with that work for the city. Joe Camara's brother and Peranio. And he's prohibited from contact with them. Anybody that had anything to do with snow, always prohibited. So we have a lot of issues, but the issue is, look, Joe Camara's brother, what he did and what Steve did, Steve Camara did, whatever deals they cut, that has to be proven. Those are allegations. And they really don't count. What does count is they have a constitutional, not my words, but the Corporation Council. They have a constitutional duty to be at all times answerable to us. And having no answer is not an answer. Saying I don't want to vote is not an answer. So as far as I'm concerned, you violated your constitutional duty. Neither of you belong in those chairs. Okay, I'm done with my rant.
Yeah, well, it's interesting. We got a message from someone saying, Chip misspoke. If Jazel pleads guilty, he is a felon, and that automatically vacates his office. Yeah,
well,
we know.
He didn't plead. Yeah, well, that's if he pleads. But we're talking about today as it stands. They haven't had their pre-trial. There's been no plea. Nothing's been entered. So right now, the assumption of his guilt, unless he pleads guilty, I didn't misspeak. I'm speaking about in the moment.
Right.
In the moment, he is not convicted, and therefore he is entitled to, well, he's going to get due process. The pre-trial hearing, I believe, is scheduled on December 6th.
Yes.
So at the pre-trial hearing, and then the trial will begin, there will be a plea entered. And you are right, texter or caller, viewer. You are right. If he pleads guilty at that time, what's the chances of that? You know, I'm a betting man. I'm betting he's not pleading guilty. He won't even walk away from an office that he should because of the damage that he's causing the city that he's supposed to love. If he does plead guilty, that's it. I would, you know, that would be the greatest thing that would happen in the city. You know how much litigation would go away? Because you know how much litigation is going to end up because of all this crap.
Oh, of course.
Litigation on the charter, litigation on, litigation on the case itself and the due process. It's just, it's mind-boggling.
And if they get a recall together, which they allegedly they are, somebody went to the city clerk's office to see how to start the process. You know there's going to be litigation with that because we went through that the last recall. And what is this? Every 4 years we're going to have another recall? Is that what we're going to have to do every 4 years, have another recall?
Yeah.
I already saw a sign on Plymouth Avenue, re-elect Sam Sutter. It's not even an election cycle yet.
Yeah.
Now, somebody just said, don't forget to mention Jean St. Pierre. He was with the mayor during his press conference.
And so was Joe Macy.
So was Joe Macy, and Joe Macy shouldn't have been there.
And so was Terry Sullivan. I think he was the only department head that attended, and there's a reason for that one, which
That's
will
right.
come
Well,
out at some point in time.
that's because the city paid his buyback.
It could be.
Could be, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, could be. But, you know, and there's also, and we can't, and, you know, we're going to try to corroborate this, but there is a rumor that the mayor sent an email to City Hall employees to attend his, as the Herald News referred to it, his speech. And realistically, that's a violation of law. These people are city employees. They're not supposed to enter into anything that has anything to do with politics.
That's right.
And that fundamentally was a political speech. So you requested that people who were being paid to provide a service to the citizens of Fall River to attend your speech so they could look like your supporters. That's not only coercion, which is, by the way, prohibited by Chapter 150E of the Massachusetts General Laws. You're coercing the employees because you're their boss, but it's prohibited by law. You can't politic in a government building. You can't hang political signs in fire stations, police stations, government centers. Even though they do, I'm not in the fire station, but there were people selling political time tickets in City Hall, which is against the law. But again, who cares about the law? That's the thing about the society we live in. The law is discretionary. It's not. You only use it when it benefits you. If it's Kavanaugh, we got to believe everything that's said about him with no evidence because you don't like him and he's affiliated with a president you dislike. And now because the feds actually produce evidence, not that it's, you know, we'll determine if it's factual after, but they did present evidence, real evidence, tax forms, other evidence, credit card receipts. But for this, we ignore. Well, I like Jazel, so I don't care if they got video of him doing something. It's a setup. But some other guy you don't like, well, you know, I don't care. If that person has been convicted of pathological lying, you know, as a felony because they lie so much, we'll accept their word because they're trying to bring down somebody I don't like. Well, that's what's wrong with the government. That's what's wrong with this partisanship that we see in Washington and the partisanship we're seeing right now in the city of Fall River. And as I said yesterday at the meeting, this isn't about the charter. It isn't about his guilt or innocence. This is about his ability to perform the duties of mayor to the benefit of Fall River. And virtually no one who understands the dynamic that perception is just as important as performance for certain jobs, like daycare, DA, head of a city, believes that he should remain in that job. But people who like him don't care if we spend the next 6 months to a year where the only news about Fall River is about the mayor and his legal woes. So go figure.
It'll be interesting to see, you know, and by the way, your commentary from your citizens' input about the child molester and all that other stuff, that actually made the news.
Yeah.
It made the news. It was on the local news outlets. It was on the radio station. I mean, so those comments made, so, you know, obviously you were speaking with some common sense.
Well, yeah, I mean, look, it is common sense, but that's the problem. As I think Jefferson said, the least common of the senses is common sense.
Right.
And that's the problem. When you allow your feelings about an individual to color something as important as this, You're not doing anybody justice, the city justice, or yourself justice, because the reality is, I don't care if you like Jazel or dislike Jazel. If he does something right, he does something right. If he does something wrong, he does something wrong. But in this case, it's not about the case. It's not about the charter. It's about, can he do the job as mayor? And look at all the media coverage. Look at all those trucks. Nobody's ever seen in my entire life, and you and I have been in politics for a very long time and been part of this process, I have never seen this much media coverage on anything.
I know.
It is disgraceful. It brings the city down, and it's the last thing we need in this community.
But
this community has got 1,000 black eyes over the past 10 years, and we don't need a daily black eye in the media.
I understand. And, you know, the thing is that you've had federal and state officials which have said, resign, step aside. Okay? How is this mayor going to go to Representative Keating, okay, or Representative Kennedy and say, we need, you know, this grant money that's out there, can you do something to make sure we get it? He can't. They don't want to talk to him. They won't even meet with him. They probably won't even take his phone calls. So how are we going to get that grant money? How are we going to get any financing? Okay? The governor won't even hear us. As a matter of fact, grants were given out yesterday by the governor's office. $44,000 was given to New Bedford. Fall River, nothing. Nothing. Did Fall River apply for it? I don't know, but I mean, come on.
They should have. They should have.
Right.
I mean, and you're right, CJ. But the other thing is, in addition to not being able to function on that level, do you really believe he can do the job as mayor? He's locked in his office with a police officer outside.
And again, costing the taxpayers money.
Do you really believe when he's in his office he's doing the business of the city?
No.
I had a city employee tell me that he basically hasn't been in his office in 6 months.
Well, he was traveling.
Yeah, he was in Paris, he was in Portugal, he was doing, you know, who knows? So fundamentally, I've heard from more than one city employee that basically Kathy Ann Viveris, what a horrifying thought, is running the city. And he hasn't really been in his office. Do you think when he's behind locked doors and only admitting certain personnel to his office that he's doing the business of mayor? And as you said, do you think anybody, any business, any politician wants to do business with him? And then the negative media coverage every single day? Do you truly believe that him staying in office, even if you love him, you still gotta, you gotta face that fact. You can't, he can't be effective. And if you do believe that, you're delusionary.
Well, you know, like I called them zombies for how many years now?
Yep.
And that's the problem. They, you know, they were standing outside with the people rallying for him to resign. And it wasn't a big rally. It wasn't a lot of people, but there was enough people. And some people that I recognize very easily because they're very active in politics in Fall River. But some of his zombies were standing on the side saying, go home, go away, go, you know.
Or worse.
Or worse, yeah. I'm trying to be nice.
Yeah. Or booing and you know, well, look, you know, the reality is it's simple. And like you said, they have to be delusionary or maybe they are zombies. I like the term, by the way. Because, look, there are people who've had problems within their own family, their own children, or, you know, have had legal issues, and they knew that they were, you know, they may have been guilty. Did they abandon them? No, most people wouldn't. They would stand up and give them all the support they could and try to minimize, you know, the damage and try to then do what they have to do and then, you know, try to rebuild their life. And I sympathize with Jason Correa's family. That, you know, and they're standing by him, which is credible, and kudos to them. It's exactly what they should be doing, standing by him personally. But to ignore the fact that he's damaging the city that he loves by staying in office, that is, you know, that's, you know, it would be like denying that your son or daughter who was basically found guilty of a crime you know, would we continue to say, well, that's okay, he should not go to jail, he should go to, you gotta, you know, if you do the crime, you gotta do the time. And he may be vindicated, and then, great, come back in, eviscerate everybody who was negative about you. And as I said yesterday, as far as I'm concerned, I have my own personal opinion, but I said on the record at the city council, his guilt or innocence will be determined by a court, not by me, not by anybody sitting on the zombie side or anybody sitting on the anti-zombie side. It will be determined by a court of law based on evidence. The interpretation of the charter will not be determined by Mike Mioza or by Dan Robillard, who is his opponent, but they have differing opinions on the charter, or by the corporation councils that spoke, and the corporation councils I spoke to. They all gave me their legal opinion. And as I said yesterday, it's only an opinion. Those things will be litigated, those things, right or wrong, will be determined by a court of law in those two circumstances. But this is a matter that has to be determined by the city council and the people of Fall River. It's not about guilt or innocence. It's about ability to do the job in the best interests of this community.
Well, interestingly enough, you know, we've talked about the recall. There's a couple of groups on Facebook calling for the recall of the mayor. We heard a citizen yesterday, Citizens Input, saying that she went and met with the city clerk on what the process is. And it's not an easy process. People, for some reason, think it's, you know, oh, go do it. It's very easy. You need 10 citizens to file an affidavit saying you want to recall them and the reasons for the recall. Then you get the the petitions to collect the signatures. You need 5% of the signatures, 5%, which 3,500 to 5,000, somewhere in that vicinity, depending on how many voters we have in Fall River now.
Yep.
And you've got 20 days, not even 3 full weeks. You have 20 days to collect those signatures. Technically, we did it in 20 days when we had excess.
Yeah.
But we had 8-hour shifts of people going out collecting signatures.
Right.
It wasn't, you know, like easy. Plus, it was the summer, so it was a lot easier to get signatures. Now that we're going into the winter months, it's going to be a lot more difficult to get those signatures.
And not only that, CD, you know, above all, because you and I were working, you know, over on, is it Sprague Street in the kitchen?
Yep.
Where they were doing the stuff, because what the first recall attempt that I started, we didn't proceed with it because of the legal issues involved and the money it would cost. We didn't have enough people. The second recall, we had people we had more people fired up, and we had enough people. But even then, see, everybody, it is easy. Well, it's not easy, but you can do it. It's doable because it doesn't cost anything. But what the people don't realize about recalls is, when you're recalling a sitting mayor, it costs money. And you know and I know that without Les Rich, who spoke yesterday, we would have never been able to win the recall, because we could not afford it. Even with all the people who voted and all the people that supposedly said they were in favor of the recall, we could Les Rich did it for virtually nothing. He almost did it pro bono.
Yep, exactly.
And the reality is we could barely get enough money to pay him, because you know something? Everybody wanted to sign the petition and everybody went to vote, but when we asked them to give a couple of dollars, nobody wanted to give us any money. That's the problem with the recall. That's why you can't fight government. They say you can't fight City Hall, not because you're not right, because you can't afford it. And that's a consideration they're not looking at.
That's it. Hey, everyone, thanks for watching. We'll see you on Friday. Stay angry.